Hi, it's KCCK's Culture Crawl. I'm Dennis Green, and my guests today are two of the Beaker Brothers, with another big show coming up at the Englert. Jim Dreier is with us, and Ed English.
Hi, everybody.
Nice to have you both here.
Oh, it's great to be back, Dennis. Thanks, Dennis.
It's always a pleasure. As you know, I am a regular attender at Beaker Brothers shows.
Yes, we appreciate that very much. It's always
pretty
good to see you
pretty much since the beginning.
I know.
When I first heard what this project was going to be, I thought, oh my God, this is literally the music of my life.
It was really something. I'll never forget the call from Grizz, the great Steve Grismore, our music director and spirited guru, said, we're putting this band together. We're going to play Allman Brothers and Santana and Clapton 10 years after, all the stuff we grew up with, listening to Beaker Street back in the old days. How old are you? Because the original constraint to be in the band was you had to be at least 50 years old. And now as we're all looking at 70, we're thinking, how long can this go on? This is so fantastic. This music is timeless, but alas, we are not.
Yeah.
So we feel very fortunate to be able to recreate a lot of the musical memories from our childhood and our early adult lives. And this show coming up, playing A Night of Santana, is just another example of that. It's been so exciting getting ready for that.
This is, so for those who aren't familiar with Beaker Street, although we talk about that pretty fair amount between talking with you all in the group and then John Himes' Friday night show, which is kind of a weekly tribute to the old Beaker Street
it's a
show.
Staple now. Go Big Mo.
Yeah. This was an AM station. A lot of people don't realize that. It was an AM station in the late 60s and early 70s out of Little Rock, Arkansas, where the host got permission to play underground rock. And this was before FM radio.
FM
this was before album rock.
Yeah.
You
only heard the top 40 stuff on the radio back then.
And on the FM, it was all beautiful music.
Right.
It was all background music and classical.
Yeah.
There was there was no rock and roll.
That's exactly right.
On the radio. For a lot of us, this was the first place that you heard. The Allman Brothers, 10
Johnny
years
Winter.
after, Johnny Winter, Free,
Santana.
And Jim, you and I have talked many times about the impact that Santana had on your life, because that was really what opened the door to your entire career.
Definitely my interest in Latin music, and it was the first album, the Santana album, 1969. And I'm not sure where I heard it. It might have been on Beaker Street, but I heard the music. I went and got the album, and I remember playing it at my parents' on my big console, stereo, and just being fascinated by the sound of the percussion, and thinking, what is that? How are they getting that sound? And it really touched me. And
of course, you're already a drummer by this.
I was
you're already playing drums
drummer,
at this
and
point.
I bought my first conga drum then, and tried to figure it out. And that was the beginning of my long road of discovery of Latin music, which has gone and
which led to the formation of Orquesta Alto Maiz, you and Bob Washut and Ed East and some others.
Yep.
And of course, your long career teaching Latin jazz at the University of Iowa. I mean, it's really been, from such humble beginnings.
It was a gateway.
Yeah.
Definitely a gateway.
Yeah, from someone that, in a very, sort of classic suburban, white small town boy, not having an exposure to any of that kind of music. That was really key. And Ed East, of course, being our longtime colleague in Orquesta Alto Maiz, is going to be our guest artist for the Santana show coming up at the Englert. So we're super excited about that.
He's played in this band before, though. He's been a guest with you before.
He sat in a couple times when Dan Hummel was out with an injury.
Okay.
But he's never really been a guest artist.
No, he filled in that one show.
Yeah, he filled at the Friday night concert series.
Yeah, he did a Friday night concert series. It was back in 2016 because John was still around. John Schultz, founding member and a brother of all sorts. The great John Schultz passed away back in 2018. And left such an imprint on the band and the spirit of the music and why we do what we do, to play music that's old, that's that old. And now that we're looking out at the crowds, Most of our crowds look kind of like a regional AARP convention, which is really cool to see people, our age still out supporting live music.
Oh, they rock.
Ticket sales are
they
good.
dance.
Early ticket sales are carrying on at the Englert. They're on sale now at the Englert in Iowa City. But to have Ed East come join us for a full evening is just going to be a fantastic collaboration. It'll just be the icing on the cake.
Well, and it is interesting how we have to reframe what old is. Because every day. Well, yes, exactly. Because we're all headed in that direction. But the days when no one's going to hire my band because we all have white hair. Those days are over, because guess what? All the rest of us who have white hair still want to go out and see bands.
Exactly right. Yeah, we don't buy into the ageism argument.
They are the greatest crowd too. When we play club, and they're all up there dancing and having a great time, and so yeah, it's really nice to be able to continue to be involved with this music, the music we all grew up with this band. It's really been fantastic. Before
we dive into the specifics of the Englert show, which is, as we've said, is going to spotlight Santana. It's going to be a Santana show. But talk about the original, in the early days, how you decided what the playlist was going to be, and then how that has evolved, through the, now what is it?
Going on 20 years.
Going on 20 years for the band, yeah.
Going on 18 years when we got together. Again, we all had to be at least 50, and I was the youngest in the band at that time. That seems like an awfully long time ago, Jim. It really does. And the whole concept was, we heard music on Beaker Street that really moved us. It was alternative. It was loud. There were bands that had auxiliary percussion on stage, like Little Feet and Santana.
Two drummers.
And two drummers for the Allman Brothers tunes. And that was pretty rare, even back then, that rock bands would feature two drummers. There are a few acts you can think of off the top of your head that used to, like the Charlie Daniels Band had two drummers, and Little Feet had an auxiliary percussion player, and the Dead, of course, was famous for their two drum setup. And there's just something about that vibe. And when we first got together for our very first rehearsal, I love telling the story. Jim and Dan Hummel and Jim Dreier here, had been cohorts in a band before, but they had never both played drum kit. So the two of them looking at each other, you could just kind of see the electricity crackle. It's like, oh. So they can finish each other's fills, and they can do the Allman Brother handoffs and the stuff that it really takes two drum kits to do successfully. And with Grizz and John kind of at the helm with the material they brought, we picked up a bunch of early Deep Purple stuff. We played Johnny Winter stuff. We played a couple of Dead tunes. We played some Hendrix. I mean, stuff that was right there in that late 60, early 70 niche, just the music that we really stuck to. And we laugh about probably the most recent song that we play is Do It Again by Steely Dan, which I think was on their very first album back in the early 70s.
Right, 73, 74, something like that.
Yeah, that's not really that much of a new song. But with the addition of a second keyboard player, a couple of years ago now, Steve Protzman joined us. We now have the ability to have a piano player and an organ player. And poor Bill Peterson, who, bless his heart,
who is now by far the youngest guy in the band.
Yeah, by far the youngest guy in the band.
Our little Beaker brother.
Our little Beaker brother. He joined the band as John's condition left him unable to carry on in the amount of playing that he wanted to do. John and Bill talked and traded emails and got Bill up to speed as close as we could. He says it's like 200 level coursework in grad school. A lot of the material we play, because you have to do it right, or people just kind of look at each other like, why are you playing that if you're not going to play it right? And so now, so many of the Santana arrangements have an organ player and a piano part, or a organ part and a synthesizer, so we've really been able to kind of bite into that. Plus, Protzman is also a really great guitar player and an amazing vocalist, and is actually on the road to go do some recording in Nashville this week, which is really great for him. We're excited for his progress as well.
I'd say that the band has pretty much stayed, as far as the material we've played, has pretty much been consistent. I think anybody can bring music into the group. Steve and John originally tended to be the ones that brought the most in. I'd say the biggest change was when we got the new keyboard player and then the new keyboard player. So when Bill joined, that was a continuation, but the band obviously was different. And then with Steve Protzman, that really, we didn't really change our material, but it really filled out the sound.
Yeah, that really helped. It was another brush in the paint box.
And there were some songs that you were able then to bring back.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that was, there were a few tunes that are still pretty tender for us in our memories because when you spend time on stage with someone and you feel that bond, and then they're gone. When you play the material that you're remembering, you can always feel the spirit come over the band. It is real. It's magical when John decides to stop in on one of our shows. It's
right.
and I in some of those tunes I hear John.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah, he's there. Yeah.
Goosebumps. Yeah, it's fantastic. And that's just the beauty of music. I mean, anybody who's ever been on stage or played with one other person, there's always that magic that happens in the space between. So we don't really miss him that much because he's always with us. But he was such an important influence on the band, and we refer to his wisdom a lot when we're working on arrangements and what we want to do. And he really shaped the early days of the band.
Jim, you saw Santana in concert
just
fairly
a couple
recently.
Years ago.
Yeah,
the first time actually.
Yeah, did that? Did that change or give you kind of additional insight on how to approach his music?
Not really in that sense. It was just sort of one of the things you wanted to check off your list, your bucket list for me. Obviously, he's older now, but he really put on a good show and did a good job. And it was really fun. We enjoyed it. We went with Steve and his wife, and so it was fun. And it was a great concert. And I've known people that have worked with Carlos Santana. And a teacher of mine has people that he works that are in the band still. So, I kind of know the background about, that, Santana, his actual, personality and stuff and all that stuff is another story. But, his music is amazing, and his guitar playing is just flawless, as it always has been. And it was
lots
a great
of drums on stage too, right?
Yeah, lots of drums.
Lots of drums on stage.
A drum set, Cindy Blackman, and two percussionists. And so it was, they are, and one of the percussionists whose name I'm blanking on now has played with him for many, many, many years. And he's that guy that plays those amazing timbali triplet fills that you hear like just in the right spot that sounds like a machine gun going off. That's him. And so, I listen for that kind of thing and go, oh, yeah, there it is. That's
awesome. Just as much a signature of Santana's music as his guitar playing.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And we were talking on the way up about the impact that seeing the Santana band in the Woodstock movie had on so many of us rock and roll fans. To see the band, just a sparse little 5-piece, it wasn't a big deal. And a little teeny-weeny drum kit by today's comparison, 2 toms and 2 cymbals. And they just lit the place up. Santana put a huge mark on the rock and roll industry when that record came out. And that was like their second big show as a band. They were friends with Bill Graham's from the West Coast, and the fact that they even got to play Woodstock is nearly miraculous in and of itself. But I'll never forget seeing that kid play that drum solo. It's like, what in the world?
Shreve,
and that's Michael Shreve, who still plays. He's got a great Facebook feed. He's a fun guy to follow, and that's another one of those high water marks. Hard to believe again that it's been 55 years ago that Santana played at Woodstock, but it just is a great testament to his enduring influence on the American rock scene. It changed a lot of things.
The show is November 16th. Yes, November 16th
Saturday,
at
16th.
At the Englert Theatre, and it's going to be, and it's an all Santana show.
That's correct.
So, how do you go about, deciding, which of those, which of those songs is it? Is it these are the ones we like to play, or we really want to show him a different, show him in a different light from the various, and also where do you stop? Because here's a guy who's still releasing music. Yeah.
Well, when we first started talking about doing a Santana show, it was kind of the same deal we had doing our Clapton tribute last year. We kind of had to put a line in the sand and say, okay, we're going to stop at this era. Because, again, Clapton's one of those guys who's still putting out records in his 70s. And when we started talking about the Santana show, we knew we were going to have to pick up a couple of 3 more songs. Because while we like to feature Santana and learn Santana tunes in our first rehearsals as a band back in '06, the task of putting together a whole evening of Santana seemed pretty daunting. And there are so many great big top 40 hits, especially like Smooth on the Supernatural album. I personally don't really care for that song very much. It's got a great guitar solo, but I don't think it's some of Santana's best work. And that's just blasphemy to a lot of Santana fans, because Smooth is the song that really put Santana over the edge. I'm like, yeah, well, maybe not so much.
If you're 35 or
well,
maybe if you're 35,
and a song that is already more than 20 years old.
I know, isn't that amazing how time flies when you're having fun? So we sat down and kind of said, okay, let's do some of the real early stuff to introduce people to that core clave, that beat that Jim Dreier likes to talk about in his teaching exercises, how to get right under the nub of it, all the way down to the very core. If you broke the song down to just its core beat structure, what does it sound like? And we kind of had to rethink a couple of songs we want to do, because we went back and listened to the source doc, and we had kind of veered off the path a little bit, making it a little too much rock and roll-y and not enough Latin jazz influence.
Interesting.
Or maybe too much Latin jazz influence and not enough rock and roll-y. And so it was really good to get a chance to go back and kind of fan back through the original source documents and listen to those first 3 or 4 Santana albums. And I think it's safe to say the emphasis for this particular show will be on the early influence that Santana had on rock and roll, because there's some screaming guitar work and really great keyboard playing that came right out of the gate with Santana. I mean, that's what they were. They were a rock band that had a Latin jazz edge to it.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
And so we have to remember that as well.
Yeah, there was, as you can imagine with any, you probably don't have this issue here running a business at all, a radio station, I should say. There's difference of opinions.
Oh,
of
really?
What should happen.
Oh, really?
Oh, no.
I know.
I don't know what that's like at all.
In
no.
a band, that happens too. So people, we had
a
to
room
make a
full
list.
of strong personalities, all with their own opinion. Yeah, I don't know what that's like.
I know. I'm sure you don't. But that's part of the negotiation and being in any group or in any organization. Certainly in a band. So we all had our favorites, and there were some tunes that we knew we were going to do. But then the new stuff was a negotiation. So we wanted to make sure we had a variety of feels as well as just the era. And we also needed to make it learnable with the amount of time we had, because a lot of this music is not for the faint of heart. It is difficult music. Yeah. And it takes some real work. And so I think what the set list that we've come up with is going to be awesome, and we're all real happy with it.
It ain't just 4 chords about cars and girls.
Wow. Well, also featuring Ed East on percussion has really opened it up for us too, because that really helped us kind of focus in on what we wanted to deliver to the audience, because the Beaker Freakers have been just fantastic over the years. I mean, our core group of followers, there's always somebody at a show that has never seen us before, but there's always a bunch of people that have. And some of those people go all the way back to our Campbell Steel Gallery shows back in the early days, or even the Jazz Under the Stars gig we did in 2015. I mean, it's been so great to have that kind of a support in the community. And we really just like being able to give back. And these get-togethers each year we learned an important lesson, and that was not to do one of these Englert shows on homecoming night.
Oh, I remember that.
We did that a couple of times.
We thought that would be a great idea. And fortunately, when we started talking to the Englert last year, Brian and the gang, the Englert staff said, there's a bye week, a football bye week, and there is no game in town that weekend. And we're like, well, that's the weekend we should play. So we're encouraging people to come revisit downtown Iowa City if you haven't been there in a while. A lot has happened over the last 5 or 6 years. The Englert has plenty of parking close. Tickets are affordable and available at the Englert website, or you can link off of the event from our Facebook page.
And it's not every local band that can sell a ticketed event in an auditorium. It's got to be a little bit of a treat for you to be able to play for a sitting crowd who are all facing you,
really
not gather around a table having side conversations.
We love playing that.
Not being background music.
Yes,
right. They take good care of us too.
Yeah, and it's the stage and the lighting, and we don't get to play that kind of a venue very often. We go up to Cedar Falls and play the Oster Regent Theater up there, which is a similar kind of place. But yeah, it's so much fun to play this kind of an event. And that's why we work hard to make sure that the music is worthy of the time that we're all going to be together. And we're going to feature Ed on some stuff like Uncle Ed said. And we're going to do some percussion feature stuff for this concert. It's going to be kind of unusual for the Beaker Brothers in that sense. And so there'll be some new stuff and some fun things and some favorite hits that people expect to hear.
And it didn't occur to me until sometime, I think it was the last couple of weeks, that we're going to have one drum kit and 2 percussion stations.
Mm-hmm.
So
wow.
we're accustomed to having 2 drum kits on stage, which is like the normal thing for Beaker Brothers to do. But then it's not necessary for Dan Hummel to play a drum kit for this.
No,
and he's
he doesn't
a
play
percussionist
drum
to
set
begin
on
with.
any
He
of this
doesn't play
stuff.
drum set anyway. He's a percussionist for all the Santana material anyway. So why even have a second kit? So it's going to look different on stage, and having Ed East there is just going to add to the vibe. And we just want to encourage everyone to come out and see the show. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. Advance ticket sales are off and running, and it's been a really great run. We're not sure what we're going to do next year for an Englert show if we're invited back. But I understand it's the 50th anniversary of KCCK.
Well, it kind of is.
We can kind of jazz it up a little bit and maybe do some Beaker Street tunes or something. Who knows? It's in the early discussions with station management. We'll see what happens.
The answer is always yes, because we know it'll always be great.
Oh, thanks for having us, Dennis. We're so happy to spend a Monday morning with you. This is great.
Thanks to KCCK for all the work you guys do. Great.
Totally our pleasure, of course. The show is the Beaker Brothers playing the music of Santana, November 16th at the Englert. Tickets for this concert at englert.org. And what's the best place to keep up with the band online?
We have a nice website now. Thanks to the collaboration between Bill Peterson and Steve Protzman, our website is out at beakerbrothersband.com. Or you can always have fun and frolic over on our Facebook page.
All right. Well, looking forward to this as always. Always it's a treat to see the band anytime, and always a treat to see you on stage at the Englert. So good luck in those final negotiations for the set list, and we'll look forward to it.
Yeah, wish us luck on getting it all prepared.
Okay.
That's where luck comes in. We're on our way.
Rehearsals are underway.
Yeah, we've been working on it.
Thanks for being with me today.
Thanks, Dennis.
Thank you.
You can hear The Culture Crawl live on the radio most weekdays at 10:30, on demand at kcck.org/culture, or subscribe using your favorite podcast player. Watch our videos on the KCCK Facebook and YouTube channels. Our producer is Lydia Kilgore. The Culture Crawl theme is composed by Vivian Shanley. I'm Dennis Green, and I'll talk to you later.